In celebration of 1 year of podcasting, we are holding a giveaway of epic proportions. Everything you need to get started running games. 4 dice trays, 12 complete sets of dice, 4 Crown Royal bags, the D&D Essentials Kit, the D&D Starter Kit, Horde of the Dragon Queen D&D Adventure, the Young Adventurers Collection, Nerdarchy's Out-of-the-Box Encounters, Brass and Steel Steampunk Tabletop RPG, OSR Greats, The Rat Hack, Into the Odd, and White Box Fantastic Medieval Adventure Game. But that's not all. The Curse of Strahd Revamped is included as well. This complete list goes to one lucky winner in the U.S. Here's how to enter. Head on over to Apple Podcasts or Podchaser and leave a review. Leave a comment as well. Then, go to our Facebook page and like it. Finally, stop by our webpage, thedungeonmastersdojo.com/about, and leave us a message. Once we hit 500 on each, we will draw a winner. You must do all 3 to qualify. We'll see you next time in the dojo.
Hey, Bill. All ready for the game. Here's my character's backstory.
All right, let me give this a quick read through. Your village was attacked by cultists, snake worshippers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a Wheel of Pain, Big Muscles.
Big oiled muscles.
James Earl Jones.
The one and only.
That's Conan's backstory.
It's developing character backstory this week on Dungeon Masters Dojo.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dungeon Masters Dojo podcast. This is a show for game masters and players alike. We hope to bring you tips and tricks to elevate your game and develop the art of dungeon mastery. I'm your host, Louis Aponte, and these are your Dungeon Masters, Scott Labby and Bill Robitaille. Let's enter the dojo and see what they have in store for us today.
Hey, Bill. Hey, Scott.
How are you?
Not too bad. And we have Matt Phillion again with us.
The one and only. Yeah.
Hi, Matt. How you doing?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
Had a blast last time, so
it was a
glad
good
to
time.
Join you again.
We got to roll some dice with Matt a couple times.
Yes,
since
we have.
last talked to him. So that was fun. We
That was a brutal campaign, wasn't it?
a near TPK at the hands of Dave.
Yeah.
But it was still a good time. So if you guys don't know Matt. Matt is the author of a couple fantastic series of young adult books. One of my personal favorites is the Dungeon Crawler series. You can imagine what that's about. The Indestructibles, which kind of like spawned the whole Phillion verse, right? That's what I call it at home. And
we're coining the phrase.
One of the readers calls. We had one of my readers named it the Indestructiverse, which is a little less self-aggrandizing. So that's what I call it in my own head. Now that if somebody else named it, I'm like, okay, I'm stealing that for future reference. They started calling it the Indestructiverse. I'm like, yeah, that's a little less self-aggrandizing than using my own name. So.
And Echo in the Sea, which I have a young lady at home who's very fond of that, and she was super pumped when she saw the little autograph sentiment that you left in those books. So she was jazzed. Yeah, that was awesome.
I'm glad you liked them.
Yeah, my daughter was the same with the Indestructibles.
Yeah.
Friends for life.
Yep, and good books. So if
Awesome.
you want them, you can get them all at MathewPhillion.com, and we're going to put a link in the description below. I guess, can you say that on a podcast? Does that count?
In
Like
the doobly-doos or whatever you want to say.
Yeah. We're going to leave a link in the description below to MathewPhillion.com. your source for the Phillion verse books.
That's what we're going with.
I'll aggrandize the heck out of you.
Oh, heck yeah.
You can aggrandize me all you want. I have to pretend I have some self-control.
That's right. Matt Phillion, personal friend of the DMD.
And as you probably would have guessed, if you don't already know Matt is an author. He writes books.
Very good books.
Very good books. So when we were bouncing this idea back and forth of doing an episode on character backstories, the first thing we thought of was, well, let's call Matt and see if he'll come on, since he's an author and that's what he does for work, and he's probably really good at it because people buy his stuff.
Yeah, the best I can come up with was like a 3.5 minute quick tip, and I was spent.
Well, yeah, you saw what I came up with, right? So Matt's our guy, and conveniently enough, Matt is not only a player but a DM. So the perfect storm. Yeah,
it's actually, you caught me at a very funny time, because I'm not only am I currently working on a book that is all backstory, it's a prequel. So it is delving into the backstory of one of the characters from the Indestructibles. But I also just had I DM for 3 different groups, and the rookies who were very new, and I just wanted them to learn the mechanics first. They must have had a conversation when I wasn't there, because all of a sudden all the backstories showed up all at once at level 8. So I was like, whoa, what am I doing this? So I have been thinking a lot about backstory lately, and so you caught me at the perfect time. Like, all backstory is on my top of mind right now for multiple reasons. So
perfect.
So with that said, how important is a character's backstory?
In terms of, I suppose it's different for if you're writing for yourself or for an audience, or if you're at the table. When I'm creating backstories on my own, I actually like to give myself enough to work with, but not enough to trap myself, which I actually like as a DM too. Like, give me enough to work with, but don't sort of lock me in, because the last thing you want to do is sort of like paint yourself into a corner with your backstories for characters, so that you can't you're sort of stuck on a path that you can't deviate from. You need to leave room for improv. So and that's where I work from when I'm creating fictional characters. I hint at things, or I kind of have an idea, but I don't have to necessarily write the encyclopedia version. And when I'm working with players, I love when they just give me something. Give me something that I can weave into this world for you to make it yours too. But I also get, if it gets over a certain length, I'm like, oh no, it's too much. Now I'm going to get overwhelmed. So I actually like to have enough what do you want to call it? Like enough steak to sizzle, but not to overeat on. Give the DM some backstory to play with, but don't stress out too much about it. I think,
we gave our group a 21-page cap. No one's ever reached it. A few have tried.
It's the whole idea of, like, if a DM gives the players a 50-page document on what the world is like, they're probably not going to read the whole thing. You can probably say the same thing about your DM too. I think, is if you give him more than he can digest in one sitting, it might be more information than he needs. But also, you don't want to trap yourself. I like backstory it's tough to work with characters with no backstory though. Like I'd actually, unless it's intentional, like if you're doing the man with no name kind of thing, which can be fun. Like if you're really just leaning into that, having no backstory, then that's a choice. But for in terms of like sort of incorporating the characters into the world, you gotta have something. There's gotta be something there. Tell me what. Maybe tell me a bit about yourself, before we sit down and start rolling dice together.
Is there a sweet spot as far as length of a backstory goes for you as a DM?
What I would actually say, if someone had a lot in mind, is give me a cheat sheet of a page. And if you want to add more, kind of give me like give me the director's cut after that, but give me something I can give it at a glance. Even do the first page in bullet points. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Do you like your family? Do you hate your family? What's important to you? What isn't? And then if you want to really dig into it, then much like a book, give me the table of contents first, and then I can dive in after that. So I always ask for like, give me something I can look at, poof, like this, and then that'll get my brain going, so I can start figuring out where you fit in the world. And then that actually also helps because I know a lot of players who have admitted like, oh, I got to go back and reread my own backstory. Like I forgot what I said to the DM. And so it almost like the cheat sheet helps the player too. Like, what did I name my brother that we haven't talked about since this is the first session of the game and stuff. So I actually, it's less about how much I tell them they want to have in total, but I beg them for like, just give me something I can like look at real quick, just so I can kind of start formulating. Because then as a DM, you're weaving everybody's backstories at the same time. So you almost want to be able to do like the Charlie Day board, you know what I mean? Like just the notes all over the screen. Okay, this connects to here and this connects to here, and you want to be able to do that at a glance.
Use red yarn; it stands out.
Yeah, exactly.
So why don't you take us on your process for developing a backstory?
Sure. If I'm do you want me to do like writing characters or writing for games? Because I have a slightly different process.
I'd say stay with the games. You know,
game?
because we're looking and if you want to do it from a player's perspective, as opposed to a DM's perspective, I mean, whatever one works for you, or both.
It's funny because I've actually had multiple players who had never played before DM for the first time this year. So I got to jump on the other side of the table and be a character, and I'm like, and if you're the forever DM, all of a sudden I have 87 characters ready to go. You tell me when you want me to play, and tell me what class you're missing. Like, you don't even have to, like, you don't have a cleric? I got 3 of them. Like, just tell me what you need. And I usually start with, I usually start with a face. Like, who is this character going to be? Who is this right here? Like, on a podcast, I just broke the Cardinal podcast rule of doing a hand gesture. You know, like, tell me the first thing that the other characters are going to see. And then I start thinking about, why they're at the table to begin with. You know, what are they looking for? And there doesn't necessarily have to be something. It can be someone who isn't looking for something other than just a change of pace. They could be the bartender at the start of a adventure that takes place in a tavern. They don't need to have that kind of motivation, but you know, what are they looking for? What do they want? What do they don't want? And why are they? For me, the class part of it plays into it too. Like, why are they what they are? And I think part of that is because I never get to play. So I'm like, why am I playing a monk right now? You know, what's my reason for playing a monk? Why is this character able to do what they can do? And so that part kind of plays into it too, because it helps me kind of figure out why I'm playing what I'm playing. You know, like, is this somebody that grew up in a cloister? Is it someone who grew up in an academy? Is it some chucklehead who picked up a shovel and figured out he was really good at hitting people with it? And so that's really where I start. And then having been the DM for so long and not wanting to, I want them to have the freedom to tell the story. I try to like ask them where I would fit in. Mm-hmm. You know, like where would somebody learn to be a wizard in your world? And if they don't know, I'm like, all right, let's talk about it. You know, let's figure it out together. I like, from the player's perspective, tell me what your world has, and I will find something that fits in it. And as a DM, if someone asks to be something that I haven't figured out yet, like, I want to play a Dragonborn. Okay, I have no idea where Dragonborn are in this world, but because you want to, I'm going to figure it out. And I like the back and forth, rather than coming in and dropping a sheaf of papers and saying, I'm so and so the great. I was trained by the finest wizards in such and such tower. Like, let's talk. This is the concept that I want to play. I want to play a smart guy, you know, who is a spellcaster who wants to unlock the mysteries of I don't know, time magic or something. But tell me how I can make that happen in your world so that our signals don't get crossed. Let's not cross the streams, you know. And from the DM basis, when I want a backstory from someone, it's like, if there's something they really want to play in my world, I try not to build the world so static or so cemented in that I can't change things to fit who wants to be in it. I'm building a new campaign for another project coming up, and like, I want to be a Fearbolg. Okay, cool. Let's figure out what Fearbolgs are like in this world. Let's build a culture together. And if it's something that I haven't that I've already addressed, I can tell them exactly how it's been there. And most of the times, I've developed that kind of backstory content for players to play with other players, because I tend to use the same world setting. So it's like, I've been building this for a while, and this comes from other. This is how the drow work in this world, or something like that. So I like I start with collaboration. Like, here's what I kind of want to play. Here's what do you need for your world, and let's find somewhere in the middle where we can both have fun.
It sounds a lot like you're a proponent of Session Zero.
It's funny now that we're all talking about Session Zero. I never knew that that's what it was called. It's like, maybe you should talk about the game before you play.
I didn't know it was called Session Zero. It was just our first get together.
Oh yeah, let's just set up, because the games where I haven't done one, and a lot of times that's like a teaching game, like where people have no idea how they're playing D&D. Like, I don't know, what do I do? Where I bring them their own dice. I'll actually buy like a $5 set of dice for the new players or whatever, and bring it to the table. Like, that's where I wish I had a Session Zero with them, so we could kind of talk more about it, as opposed to like, here, let's bang out a quick character. Or I might even make the character for them because they're overwhelmed by the idea of skills and bonuses and stuff. But if you have a Session Zero with somebody who knows just as much, just a little tiny bit about D&D, like just enough to know you're making a character, it exists in the world, and you get to do what you want to do to have fun. Like, that's enough that you need to have that first conversation. And then you sit down for an hour or 15 minutes or 6 hours and drink a lot and talk about the world, and however you want to do it. But yeah, I love Session Zeros because it lets you hit the ground running when you actually start playing for real.
Exactly.
So when you're writing these backstories, do you add flaws to your characters, or even if you're not writing the character backstories but your players are, do you encourage flaws to be kind of like built into those characters?
Oh yeah, if I'm building characters, I don't think what's the flaw. I just sort of automatic, like, it's autopilot for me. Like, none of these characters are perfect. How is this guy screw up? In what way? Because we all are in something. We've all got something that we think we know what we're doing and we don't. Or I've never actually sat down and gone, what's this guy's flaw? I just sort of go, oh, I almost start with that. How is this guy not perfect? And then build out from there. And I'm lucky because my players tend to like suboptimal, goofy, flawed characters, so I don't have to encourage it too much with the people that I DM for. But if someone were to show up with like this, either a perfect, perfect character that doesn't have any flaws, or even one that's just sort of underdeveloped. Like if somebody shows up, a new player who's like, okay, I'm just a life cleric, I look like this. Like, okay, so what do they think they're bad at? Not even what they are bad at. What do they feel like they're bad at? Like, what do they do that bothers other people, or something like that? And I think that helps it gives you a chance to put some meat on the bones of the character too, and it ends up being, the players that I run with have the most fun when they lean into their flaws. Whether they think they can win any fight that they walk into, or whether they think they're smart and they're not, or they think they're charming and they're not, or they have daddy issues or whatever it might be. I mean, really, there's, they've got characters that can't, they can't keep it in their pants, whatever their flaw is, that leans in. They all tend to have more fun leaning into that than leaning into what they're amazing at, which, and I think players can get kind of hooked on that too. Like, I can do that. I'm not trying to, it's the whole idea of, you don't win D&D by winning D&D, you win D&D by having fun. And it's like, oh, so I'm not trying to make an optimized, like, perfect video game character. I'm trying to make a movie. I'm playing a character in a movie or something, or a TV show that's, and if they're struggling, I'll actually point out to, like, think about your favorite characters, think about what their weaknesses were and why that made them more fun to watch. And also think about the characters whose flaws you really couldn't stand. And how if it made them unfun to watch, maybe that's a bad flaw to roll with for 20 levels too. So that too, like, figure out things that you've seen in flaws in other characters that were unenjoyable for you because you might not want to have to be stuck with that for 200 sessions or something.
Yeah, see, I've done something similar to what you did. I picked a disadvantage or a flaw, and I've built my character around that. And I've had so much fun doing that and playing that character that it's glaring, it's huge, it's everything about that character is that flaw, and then you have fun with it. And everyone embraces that quite a bit.
Just last night, running a game, we have a player he's playing a sorcerer who thinks he's a good brawler, and the player is like, I am not built to win a fight, but I think I can. And he actually challenged someone to a bare knuckle pit fight last night, and the player's like, I am going to get my ass kicked, and this is going to be amazing. And he got his ass kicked, and it was amazing. But it was that leaning into that thing. It's like, I am not built to do this. I think I can, and it happens multiple times.
And he would have won if the other guy didn't cheat.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing too. And
justify
in this particular case, yeah, either you justify it, or in his case, he says, he's doing some soul searching right now. Like, it actually becomes a way for the character to develop and change too. Because he was like, after the second or third beatdown, you start assessing yourself a little bit differently than you did before.
All right, so maybe I need to pick my fights a little better. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about things not going right. How about conflict? How would you incorporate conflict with your characters?
Oh, I think that's. I want people to be comfortable with the conflict that they pick. Like, don't pick a conflict that's going to bother you while you're playing it. You want something that you pick the conflict you can handle. Yeah. And as a player and as a character, sort of like pick a conflict that will be fun to lean into instead of being frustrating. But you kind of want to have some reason to propel the character forward, and whether that's not getting along with their I've got a running joke with a couple of my players, like, you don't get experience from fighting each other. You don't get XP for stabbing your teammates, but it's all in good fun. But it's the conflict between each other, conflict between the world, especially with the world. What it helps, because that helps with that whole why are you there part of the backstory too. Like and it helps challenge worldviews. I had a character who, and it's funny because talking about whether you talk to the DM about the world or not, had decided before showing up at the table, my character hates orcs. Hate orcs. Like, okay, but they're like a pivotal member of society. They're like regular people in society in this particular setting. Like, they're not actually like the other out there in the field. Like, you might run into them at the grocery store. And she stuck with it. And it's been like, and over the course of the campaign, there's this conflict of like actual like dislike of and then realizing that she might be wrong, and letting it be not the player that comes to the conclusion, but the character. And it's been this great conflict for the character of like having almost like it's a fight with someone who doesn't know they did something wrong. Like, you've picked a conflict with someone who isn't actually aware of the conflict that you have with them. And it gives a great chance for the character to develop, because that's kind of what we want over the course of all these levels and all this time that we spend with them. We spend 300 hours with the character. You want them to learn and grow and change and be different from when they started, other than just leveling up and learning new spells. You want them to be a different person. Conflict. If somebody doesn't have something that they have conflict about, I kind of nudge the player to do something with that. Like, dude, just what troubles you? What bothers you? What gets you rearing for a fight?
All right,
and
here's a little.
And I encourage it.
Here's a little secondary. What if they bite off more than they can chew? Conflict. I hate all law enforcement.
Oh,
or like I said, well, I hate all orcs, or I just it's a race, but sometimes it's okay. I'm a female character. I hate all men because men are assholes and men are pigs. How do you rein that in?
I think, especially early on, like giving them the chance to realize maybe I'm trying to think. There was an example with that with I've got a table of folks that have never found a mistake they can't find in terms of Like, it's not even intentional. They just always seem to make the least optimal decision for themselves as a group. And I fought the law, and the law won is like kind of their theme song there. Like they keep committing crimes and they keep getting caught. And
But it's the cop's fault.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we didn't steal that boat. Yes, you did. You're on it right now. The crew is dead. You stole that boat.
And the owner's unconscious and tied in the bed up in the bow.
Yeah, it's, if they bite off more than they can chew, I try to be merciful in the way to let them learn lesson. Like, I'd set it's similar. It was the pit fight situation. It was a no magic situation. You will be forced. You will be either shot down or forcibly ejected if you use magic in this room. This is a clean fight. Mano a mano. It's a clean fight. And players do what they do. They try to, like, can I sneak around here? Can I do this without getting caught? Can I do this? Can I do that? But one of the players I cast Thaumaturgy too, and you feel 3 hands grab you from behind and drag you out of the room. Like, before she could even finish casting the spell, it's like this verbal component. They see you casting a spell. They've told you no magic. It's loud because it's Thaumaturgy, right? Like, I make a booming voice and my eyes glow, and suddenly you feel yourself being dragged from the bar and thrown into the street. And there was no painful consequences for the character. It was almost like the character gets embarrassed by what happened, but it was a sort of a biting off more than it. In another situation, it might have been a big brawl with all the characters, but in this particular case, I just wanted the character to learn, like, you're going to get, know your environment, and to try to tone things down. I'll try to put an NPC in there to fix something. Like, I had the character that warned them, say, like, was I not clear? Did I not explain the no magic rules? Because if I'm doing it wrong, I don't want to get somebody else in trouble. Next time, like, putting it back on the character. It was like sort of self-insert. Like, was it me? Did I not make it clear? But I try not to punish them for biting off more than they can chew. I try to, if I can find a way to
redirect,
make an appropriate response to the behavior. I think would be the way I do it.
I have a follow-up to that. Now, how do you handle between character conflict and player conflict at the table? When the characters are having conflict, do your players have also conflict at the same time? Or
I find it interesting that you asked that question.
Well,
very interesting.
That's why
because we're both looking at you.
Yeah, he's usually the center.
I feel like this might have really happened.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've had multiple situations where the players got into a conflict with each other where I had to be like, are you two really fighting or are your characters really fighting? But the best part was, in one of the times, it was their 2 sisters and their characters are going after each other. And as I'm like, I did like the red card, green card, like, hold on a minute, you guys okay? And the older sister goes, no, we've been working this out for 40 years. It's cool. Like, this is just 40 years of conflict working itself out of the table. And it was probably the healthiest fight they've ever had. It was, you're rolling dice to kick the living hell out of each other.
You'll get my bill for the therapy session.
Yeah. I think, there's enough DMs on this call right now to be like, sometimes we are a therapist, right? Like, sometimes that's
not sometimes, a lot of times.
Yeah, I brought that question up because I was with Korik. I mean, we're good friends outside, even when we're at the table, but during the game, and I'll have to let Scott explain how this actually went down because he does a better job than I do. We had conflict in the game, but we handled it different. We were still friends outside the game. There was no animosity. Scott, I'll let you tell it.
Well, Lou's character executed an unarmed civilian in cold blood, which
in self-defense,
which upset Korik's character, and consequently a verbal dispute erupted, and then shortly after, the most pathetic fist fight I had ever witnessed in my entire life between the 2 of them erupted as well.
In real life or the characters?
No, in
characters.
Between the character, it was It was extremely comical because neither one of them landed a blow on the other. And Lou's character ended up fleeing into a home pursued by Korik's character and then leaping out a window to get to safety. And it was wildly entertaining, as most of Lou's antics are at the gaming table.
He's a pain in the ass to game master for, but he's comical as hell.
Yeah, he's entertaining. It's
It leaves him speechless.
yeah.
But my point was, with that scenarios, while we had conflict in the game, Cork and I did not have any outside the game. So I didn't know how, or even that applied to your tables and how you deal with it if it does happen like that.
I've had times where I couldn't tell if it was actually like has it crossed over into real world or not. But having a quick check-in, like with the sisters, like, you guys okay? Like, no. I mean, our characters are going to kill each other, but we're fine. You know, we're gonna go out for a beer afterwards. It's totally fine. I had a very similar other situation where one of the characters had a cursed magic item. Mind you, the two players are best friends in real life, and I actually thought I thought one of them was going to get in the car because we're doing it through Zoom. I'm like, they're gonna get in the car and go kick his ass. Like, I think like I'll be right back. And like, I honestly thought it was going to go to that, but it was a pathetic fight. It was a couple of dexterity based characters who none of them, they just kept dodging. Like, neither one of them could hit the other one, and they ended up devolving into thunder waving each other repeatedly because they couldn't actually hit each other.
Imagine that.
An identical situation. Same thing. Yeah. When in doubt, Thunderwave.
Captain Thunderwave over here.
That's his go-to.
And then
we call him Thunder Lou.
Then that was how they resolved the conflict through Thunderwave, and then actually, long story short, one of the other characters has a cursed sword that she must fight to the death anyone that causes her harm. She gets caught in the Thunderwave. And suddenly I've got 6 characters fighting each other in the Underdark, one of whom can't stop. And that was when the fight with the two sisters happened, like, because then her sister gets involved and she's got to kill her, like her sister's character. And I'm like, okay, either this is the single greatest dumb fight I've ever DM'd for, or none of them are coming back to the table next week, and everybody was able to just laugh it off. But I couldn't tell. But there was another. You speak of like the character like doing something that the character doesn't agree with. I've had characters in character stage an intervention for their resident firebug. We have a character who is flat out it's a pyromaniac. Like, she'll set anything on fire. She sets everything on fire. And at one point they're like, we need to talk about property damage and we need to talk about consequences. And then later on, she led a intervention for the character that didn't understand money, because he kept either giving away money or refusing payment for things, and it was driving the more mercenary. So they actually in character full on like, we need to talk. And sat them down. Like, for one, it's like, we're going to explain property damage to you and consequences, and for the other times, like, we're going to explain why some of us need money. and they resolve these in character conversations by like sitting down in a room and like closing the door behind them and be like, let's talk about your negative impact on the group and what you're having for the entire group.
Could you do us a favor and send a transcript of the property damage speech so we can give it to Lou?
Or maybe we can set up a meeting with them and Lou.
Yeah, just...
I'll have the ones that talk to the firebug sit down with Lou's character, and you guys can have like.
And we say Lou because it's easier than trying to just individually go through all his characters and do exactly the same thing. So we just go straight to the source.
You break the fourth wall and go right to the player.
Yes.
We got to have a conversation.
The player characters are going to have an intervention with the player. All right,
it's not funny.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one. Motivation. I mean, how important is motivation when you're building your backstory?
We all got to be there for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, that's having a motivation, I think, is supremely important. How dramatic that motivation is can be really flexible, though. Like I was actually thinking about this just before the call. I'm like, you can have the Mad Mardigan motivation. I want to get out of this cage. Like that's his whole motivation. I would like to get out of this cage. I will take care of the baby. Like it doesn't have to be some grand, I'm trying to slay a dragon or rescue a princess or something like that. Sometimes you just want to get out of the cage. But then it's great to have a character who wants to change the world, and that's their motivation, and that can lead to other things. I have actually the fire starter, actually, of all characters, has the goal of killing her father.
Well, keep it in the family.
Yeah. She's like, my goal is to find my Efreeti father and kill him. And I'm like, I can build an entire story arc around that one piece of motivation. Like, thank you for that.
Yep.
Because I'm going to go out, I'm going to hand paint a mini to be her father on the battlefield. I'm going to create a whole scenario where she has to get him out of a ring, out of the fire Efreeti ring that the whatever it's called in the DMG. I can create a motivation for how does she get him out so she can face him on the material plane. And all of that was like, what's your motivation? I'm gonna kill my dad. Like, okay, we can work with that.
One sentence that works.
Yeah,
says a lot.
Meanwhile, her husband plays a character. Her husband plays. It's the longest con I've ever seen in a game. He's playing a very small tabaxi that pretends he's a house cat, and he went 18 months without saying anything in character. He says he speaks at the table, but he never broke character. It took him 18 months to slip and say something out loud that other people could understand. And I'm like, it's this great long con, but his character motivation is, I'm with her. Like that's it. He's with the firebug, like that. I'm with her, and that's plenty of motivation as long as she's got motivation, so they can kind of all ride together with that. I have trouble if somebody has no motivation to be at the table as a character. Like, what's your purpose for being here? Like, even if it is just I'm here to help, or it can be I'm here to save the world, or I'm here to destroy the world. But yeah, they got to have some reason to be there. Otherwise, it's even if it's money, you can be Han Solo. I'm just here to make a buck. Yeah. That's a perfectly reasonable motivation. Although it's funny because characters change over time. We have this mercenary character, one of the sisters actually, and really it started off like, what's your motivation? Money. Okay, cool. You're a mercenary. But the longer her character's with the group, the more the motivation seems to be, and I'm going to keep these dumbasses alive. Like, and that becomes another motivation, or I'm going to, I guess I'm a hero now, and that happens naturally over time. You need a motivation to start, and then that motivation can change and shift as things are going.
The joys of development.
Yeah, it's nice to see that growth in player characters.
Yeah, if somebody comes to the table with no motivation for why their character is there, I need a little something as a DM, just because I need something because I'm building the world for them. Like I might be the one building the sandbox, but it's for them to play in. So tell me why you came to play. So I don't ask for a ton of backstory motivation, but did you grow up poor and you don't want to live the same life as your parents? Were your parents adventurers who never came home again? Are you was your dad really good at adventuring and you're trying to show him up? Like, tell me something, give me a reason to be there. Or or it's as simple as, I'm the last kid in the family. I'm not going to inherit anything. I guess I'll go hit the road and see what comes up. We have motivation, right? It's real people, like what's up? We all have backstories. So like, just treat your character with it. And not everybody's backstory in real life is all that interesting either. So sometimes you can have a pretty basic backstory and it's totally workable. So yeah, I think backstory is super important, but how grand it is can be very open to interpretation.
And on the topic of motivation, we're going to take a break here so we can remove all combustibles from Lou's immediate area, and maybe we'll let him out of the cage.
Not funny.
Let's talk about this week's sponsor. Drip It is an online gaming magazine that focuses on the gamer, not just the games. Join the discussion of Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games, retro gaming, classic gaming, and all those great games that don't get enough attention.
Drip It calls itself an inclusive gaming roundtable. Yes, just like King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table. Regardless of who you are or what you're playing, you are equally deserving of the respect owed to all who do battle in the world of gaming.
Check them out at drippit.com. That's DRIPPIT.com. And we're back.
Yes, all the combustibles have been moved out of Lou's reach.
We even watered down his drink just to be careful.
And we put corks on his fork so he wouldn't put his eye out or anybody else's. So we are all set. So tell me, family. Does family fit in or does it not? I know some DMs will be like, ooh, you have a wife and children. It's only a matter of time before I kill them.
If you put them, basically what I say is anything you put in your backstory, I'm going to I have permission to use. If it's there, I try to get a read on what the player wants. Like, are they there to cause conflict? Are they there because they are the conflict? Are they there just for flavor? Like, is there someone to go home to? So if it's there and I think the player wants to use it for conflict, like we had a player whose family was corrupted by Baphomet. His whole family turns out was felt to this Baphomet cult. But I could tell that was the player created this family in order to enable future storytelling about them, and I was happy to oblige. But I try to figure out what they're looking for from it. Actually, very few characters that I'm dealing with actually have a significant family story. They might know who or what they came from, but not so much that it's kind of see how much they lay down on the table for you to mess with versus I grew up over there. In which case, okay, so you're not really too interested in messing with your backstory. But if there's a lot of details, like I have a younger brother that I don't like, and I have deep-seated issues with my father. I'm like, okay, so that conflict will come up somehow, if it's there. So family can be kind of a touchy thing. I don't want to go killing off somebody's mom and dad in game unless I know they're okay with it. And that's a good conversation to have with the player, I think, at the start. Like, what's the purpose of having the family there? Do you want them involved? Is it something that you want to be part of the plot, or is it just more because sometimes backstory can be there for color and flavor as opposed to being there for gameplay or for story arcs. So that's a good session zero thing too. Like, are they okay? Is it okay if I mess with them? I won't tell you how. Is it okay if I mess with your children that you've got at home in terms of like their safety versus dragons? Like, it's like, or
I don't ask.
Just do it. Yeah.
If it's in the backstory, how much does it piss you off when they come to the table? Oh, I'm an orphan.
What is that, like 80% of players are orphans?
I freaking hate that shit. I throw it back at him going, rewrite.
Give me something else. That doesn't bother me so much because I think of like what the world was like in medieval times and like how many orphans there actually were. Like, statistically, it's not a reasonable thing for oh, my parents died in the plague. Mine too. It was just not an unreasonable thing for a medieval setting. So if you're living in a land where like there are regular like goblin raids, there's a fairly moderate chance that you lost your whole family to a burning house during a goblin raid. So that doesn't bother me too much if they have something else. Give me something to work with. I mean, just like, hey, I'm an orphan and now I'm a fighter. Okay, I need more than that. And also if they're not, it's funny. I think of the family question of like, we play this game to escape our real lives. This is not my case. I love my family, but some of us don't want to think about family when we play the game. Like maybe the last thing they want to do is think about parents and kids because that's or extended family because it's something that they're trying to escape. So I actually don't. If their wish fulfillment for their character isn't to be He-Man, but to just not have a family to be annoyed at, Okay, we can work with that. We can work with that. Tell me more about your character otherwise. So,
Which is
actually,
why none of Scott's characters have ever been married.
Or because none of them will ever have ex-wives.
I will say my favorite like family backstory is if a character has at least one ex that they have awkward situations with. That I'll mess with. Like, you've got an ex-spouse that you don't get along with. you're running into them in the next big city you get to.
Like that sounds familiar.
Now you're on my page.
So some players will write large backstories. As a DM, can there be too much backstory for you?
There can be too much backstory for me to use, especially because, my smallest group is 6 players, so it can be overwhelming for me. Like it's more of a how much can I parse out. The best quote I've ever heard, and I wish I could find the recording. I was listening to an interview with Jerry Holkins from Penny Arcade, does Acquisitions Incorporated, and one of his players for their podcast, he literally wrote a novel as his backstory. And it was his first time playing the game, and he didn't know any of the ins and outs, and he just wrote a novel as his backstory. And like 2 years into playing the game, they're being interviewed, and they're talking about, so how much backstory did you know about your characters? And Jerry says, well, so and so had this much, and Ryan wrote 300 pages, which I think you now know, Ryan, was rude. was rude. And it was the pause. It was, which I think you now understand was rude. What I try to tell my players is you're not writing the novel of what happened beforehand. You're writing the novel of what happens to you in the game. So start with the prologue. Write a prologue because you're about to tell the story. There's only so much that's going to happen. There's only so much that could have happened to a level 1 character before you get there, because that falls into. I have a lot of players that try to get other people to win the wars for them in a lot of ways. Like, they try to rein in NPCs to fight, and I'm like, yeah, but it's your story, man. Yeah. It's your. I want you to be the hero. I don't want these pawns to be the hero of the story. It's your story to tell. And in terms of backstory, like, the backstory should be the beginning, and the real story about your character should happen at the table. And that's what I try to encourage them to do, because you could write, Oliver Twist, I was born, I grew up, and tell his whole story from age 3 to age 10, and then suddenly he became a level 1 rogue. But my encouragement to players is write enough to get you to the start of the novel you're about to write, as opposed to writing the novel about what happened to you beforehand. Especially because you could get shanked by a kobold in the first session, and then suddenly the end. You've written an entire backstory for a character that got killed by a 4 hit point kobold.
That is very true.
So I mean, I work really hard not to kill level 1 characters. I try to let them at least get to level 3, so it hurts more. But
they want to make sure they're attached first. See, he is on my page.
I want them to feel rage, not disappointment, when their character dies. But that's sort of the thing. Like, we're here to tell a story together, and that's the other thing. We're telling the story together as a group of players in the DM. So, you can write a novel, or you can play D&D together. They don't necessarily. They're 2 different art forms, and they're both 2 viable art forms. I do both. So. But tell enough to begin the story, and then get ready to tell more, because you get hopefully 20 levels of adventures to engage in with your friends and tell the story that's yet to happen. Because there is that especially if you've got a really great idea. Okay, so this is what happened. This is what happened. Here's my entire family lineage back 300 years. Like, okay, save that. We might need that later. Especially, I can mess with a 300-year family lineage too. There can be a vampire in there. You want to meet your great grandfather? We can make that happen. But yeah, I really try to encourage them to focus on the now for their character, and not get too bogged down. You need some backstory, but you don't want to have so much backstory that you lose the present.
There you go. So, all right, what about backstory fitting into the campaign? You know, obviously you want to, I mean, we've touched on this a few times already on some of the other topics. What if they throw you one that just doesn't fit?
That I try to be as flexible with the campaign setting as I can. If it's something that just really is out of left field, like we're talking like I came out of a like pod from Krypton. You know, and I landed in a field and a couple of peasants raised me. I like, okay, we got to have a conversation about this particular backstory. I will try to nudge them, or I will tell them, like, I'll try to meet them halfway if it's something that doesn't fit in the campaign. You know, like if like I bring up the Dragonborn thing, I'm like, I have no idea what they are in this world. I didn't really care to put them in the world, but if you really want them to be one, I've left enough wiggle room in my campaign setting that I can make that happen. I try not to be. I have the same advice for folks that are building their first homebrew campaign for the first time too. It's like, stuff's going to change on you. You got to be prepared for improvisation, guys. Like you can't like don't in my tactic for that is what do they call it, the video game, the fog of war. Like you can only see so much and I try to structure the campaign like that so that I have enough, I can brush away some fog, like oh that's where the rock gnomes are. Okay, so you want to be you're okay, now we can work on your backstory over there. And I try to leave myself enough room there. If I will very guiltily, if it really doesn't fit in the campaign setting. I had a player that really wanted to play a Kalistar from the Eberron setting.
Yep.
Which is so Eberron. It's like there's a lot of stuff in it. Like if this player had come to me and said I want to be a Warforged, I'm like, okay, we're not going to call it a Warforged, but I will figure out magic robots for you. I will find a way to put magic robots in this world. We won't call it a Warforged because that's Eberron. But the Kalistar are so very specific to that setting. I'm like, I have no idea how to build this in this world. I'm like, what are you trying to get from that character or that species that we can find that will fit in the world? And I worked with her like very specifically. I'm like, what are your hopes for this character? And let's find something that will work in the setting that will also make you happy as a player. And that was also on me by saying, like, because I didn't remember they were in the book. And I'm like, and Eberron, I think Eberron's rad. Like, I like Warforged. I like Shifters. You know, sure. What else is in there? Go ahead. Just let me know if you pick anything weird. I want to be this thing. I forgot those were in there, and I have no idea how to put them in the campaign. No, I screwed up. I screwed up. This is on me.
Now, was that a new player or an experienced player?
This was her second character. So she had played a really well designed, really well thought out warlock, and had gone kind of did a deep dive. Like, what is this other cool stuff that I could be as my second character? And I felt super guilty about not about being like, whoa, I can't. That's just a whole level of complexity that I haven't designed for the world yet, and I don't know where to put it.
Shake the dice, choose again.
Yeah, and like there's like 27 other species. Can you be something else, please? Anything else? I really did have to kind of sit down and be like, I don't know how to build this into the world. Could I talk you into doing something else? But it was also, it wasn't just a flat no. It was like and that was the case where had she presented a case for really strongly wanting it for X reason, I'm like, okay, how can we tailor this to this world? Like, what can we create from scratch that will use the game mechanics so I don't have to rewrite the rules? You know, like, what are their abilities? Okay, how do we reskin that? I love reskinning things into campaigns too. Like it's balanced. It's in a published publication for a reason. You know, they tested the hell out of it. It works. It's just so you just rename stuff to fit with your world. That was just so weird that I had to be like, I got to say a no to that because I don't know how to do like parasitic, ethereal creatures living inside beautiful humanoids. It's really much for me. This is low magic setting, guys. Low magic setting.
Oh my God, you have heartworms.
Yeah, what do I do? You've got a magic tapeworm. But that's only happened to me one time where it was like I just had to kind of say a no. There's other times I'm like, we'll figure something out. You know, we'll and because it is. I consider DMing a collaborative thing too. I I build the framework, and I try to engage them in a way that they can fill in. They can bring their own Legos to the party. You know what I mean?
There you go. Perfect.
And that's our discussion about player backstories with author Mathew Phillion. If you are interested in reading any of Matt's books, if you have a young adult in your life, or if you're just an adult that likes a good story like myself, head on over to MathewPhillion.com. That's MathewPhillion.com to peruse his library of titles, including the Indestructibles series, Echo in the Sea, and the Dungeon Crawler series. Once again, that's MathewPhillion.com.
And that's developing a character backstory. See you next week in the dojo. That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo, or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.